It's 10 o'clock. So I would rather teach from the center of the auditorium because that at least compacts people together. But I guess that this is a big void here of people. So anyway, it would be nice if somebody would front fill it, but like Craig is going to do. You can sit on the front row. You can sit on the front row if you want, Craig.
Ask and you shall receive.
Okay. So don't kid me about being Kid Hines because that's an insult to him. But truth of the matter is it's unfortunate that I'm here. I'm glad to be here, but it's unfortunate circumstances. Ken was called away to Denver where his mother had a very bad fall, very bad. And she died, what, 2 days later, something like that. And so he's been dealing with that, and then got back very early Saturday morning. And Marc had called me early in the week and told me what was going on and asked me to step in for the day. And so that's what I'm planning on doing. So Marc and Ken have really taken on a very interesting task because if you look at the book of 1 Corinthians, it's filled with the beginning of the book is division and sexual immorality and dealing with lawsuits and all kinds of other things going on. And gets to chapter 13, and it almost seems like he stops and reflects and steps back, and he talks about love. And Paul talks about the important, I keep doing this, and I got this screen here. I'm going to get used to that. Paul talks about the importance of love, and read that again. I know that they went over this, but it is so, we tend to just blow it off as, you know, I love people, and I love things, and I love this, and I love that. But it really is, he sets the stage for this. And then, starting in verse 4, which is what they've been focusing on for the last few weeks. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude, which is what they dealt with last week, the rudeness. It does not demand its own way, which is what we're going to deal with this morning. It is not irritable, and it keeps no record of being wrong. You know, this is a very, very interesting subject. And the question is, why is love so difficult and demanding? Why is that? Go ahead, Roy. What was that? God does want us to love, okay. Jim? You're going to speak up real loud. My hearing aids don't carry that far. I'm sorry. Okay, we love ourselves more than we love others. And that's a natural being, and that is exactly right. But what about, see, I love my dog, I love my cat, I love to go to this restaurant or that restaurant. Oh, by the way, I love my wife, you know, all this kind of thing. We use these terms in you know, so lightly, and they mean so many different things, and you have to catch the context of what you're talking about. Okay, what else? How do we really know that somebody loves us? How do we really know it? But they do. It's performance-based. And performance comes from inside the person. It isn't just head knowledge. It's putting that love in your heart. And so it's performance-based. And oh, by the way, another aspect to this is Think about, Kathy and I have been married 53 and a half years. Do you think the love we had for us 53 and a half years ago is the same love that we have today? No, of course not. It's different. It's a mature love. And so, love is one of those things that you can have it, but it changes and matures over time. And it is a very, very demanding subject. And so when Paul is talking to them and talking to us, he's dealing with many dimensions. It's like a facet. If you look at a diamond or something, and you can look at all the different facets, there's many facets to it, and plus the clarity and all that. And on top of that, with human beings, it's the maturity issues that come along. So it is a demanding subject. There's no doubt about that. I'm going to deal with what?
Love being difficult and demanding. I really have trouble with that because it seems to me if we're following Christ and he would do whatever he did because of his love, then we should have the same attitude. And when you, like you said, you have it within you, and so then it's not a demand, it's a response.
But your premise, and I understand your point, your premise is, if we're following Christ, how I followed Christ 53 and a half years ago is a whole lot different than it is today. And, and one of the things that I see is in God is the unbelievable patience that he has had for me. I was baptized when I was 15 years old. So I've been a Christian 60 years. I think this month, if I remember right. It matures, it changes. Have you ever heard somebody say to you, like your husband or wife, I love you, but I'm not sure I like you right now? I've heard that, okay? It happens. And that is honesty. And I think that part of loving each other is being honest with each other. But how do you deal with it? You have to speak up real loud. Why don't you stand up, Bob?
Paul has changed the Greek word. It's a copy. That is not phileo. When I met my wife, I phileo her for a while. We got married. But that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about. Go to John, and he says, this is Jesus teaching Peter, do you agape me? Yes, I phileo you. Do you agape me? Yes, I phileo you. Phileo is being phileo. That's where you were talking about it.
Yeah, exactly. The different dimensions. There's 4 Greek words.
We're learning what that is by reading these verses.
Right.
And then he says to Peter, do you phileo me? And Peter went, oh, and he cried. Now we know the difference because English is not very friendly. There's 4 versions of translated love. They're not the same. I told you about 2 of them.
Right.
The other one is eros, sexual love. The other one is family love. So we have a lot of family love and not eros because that's sexual love. But here, what he's done, and why we're having difficulty, he's changed the word from phileo to agape. And then if you take the NIV in this, and it gets to really the hard part, it says, I've hardly ever noticed that you do it wrong. And that's what you're talking about.
Right. It's the Hines.
That's different.
There's different dimensions to it. Read John 50, the 28, where Jesus deals with the last chapter in John, where Jesus deals with John, and it's the same issue as he deals with Peter, as Bob was talking about. So love does not insist on its own way. And first, let me put a bit of a fence around this. When is that not true? When is it not true that love does not insist on its own way. There have been many situations in my life where I have loved someone and I have insisted it be my way. When would that be?
When you consider that one more important than yourself.
Okay. Okay, what about ethical issues? Oh, go ahead. Kathy?
It can also be important in a family. Sometimes you have to insist on your way with your child for his or her safety
Right.
or whatever.
Right. You got
Sometimes they have no choice.
right, right. We had a grandson that used to go, when he was real little, he'd go around saying, I have no choice. But yeah, you know, we have ethical issues in my line of work. I ran into it all the time, especially early in my career. And ethical issues, safety issues, illegal issues. I mean, there are limits. You're talking to a teenager, sometimes you may have, out of love, you may have to insist on it being your way. I don't think there's any other way around it. And I'm sure there's other things. But I just don't want to get off into a panacea of, you know, of just love is the only issue here. The main issues that we need to deal with here are being in control, you know, self-centeredness, and being selfish. I know none of us have that problem. I've never had that problem, but I stole this out of your presentation from last week. This was used for rudeness, but it fits our story today so well. Here's Mo, and Mo is swinging on the only seat, and the unhappy kids are saying, we've been waiting for a long time to have our turn on the swing. And Mo's response, what makes you think that you should have turns? Well, have we ever acted like Mo? Anyway, actually, to be honest with you, we could just look at this cartoon and it tells the whole story. I mean, let's be honest about it, you know. Whatever I needed to know, I learned in kindergarten on the swing set, you know. And our culture is little help. Do you remember Frank Sinatra's song, My Way? He sang it in 1969. And I want to read that to you. Because this is not just Frank Sinatra singing. This is Frank Sinatra's personification. And if you look on the website, you'll see this kind of thing. And these words are the words he actually sang, not necessarily what the song had originally. He writes, and now the end is near. And so I face the final curtain. My friend, I will make it clear. I will state my case of which I am certain. I lived a life that's full. I've traveled each and every highway. And more, much more, I did it my way. Regrets, I had a few, but then again, too few to mention. I did what I had to do. I saw it through without exception. I planned each chartered course, each careful step along the way. Really? And more, much more, I did it my way. Yes, there were times, I'm sure you knew, when I bit off more than I could chew. But through it all, when there was doubt, I ate it up and spit it out. I faced it all, I stood tall, I did it my way. For what is a man? What has he got if not himself? Then he has not to say the things he truly feels, and not the words of someone who kneels. Let the record show I took the blows and I did it my way. Music was beautiful. It was a beautifully done song. Frank Sinatra is a good vocalist, and he got the best, you know, and it was actually released in January of 1969. I was thinking about this week, and I was doing my quiet time, and I was reading the 23rd Psalm, and it suddenly struck me, and I'll see if it strikes you the same way. I'm going to read that. The Lord is my shepherd. This is, of course, a psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Now, this is David's my way. And who is he looking toward in my way, his my way? He's looking at God, isn't he? He's focused on God. God is his way. I mean, he talks about problems, walking through the valley of the shadow of death. It isn't just a panacea of everything's a good time. He talks about God as if he's really close to God. Whereas the song, My Way, it's a song of it's a song of self-righteousness, a song of I don't care about anybody who kneels, he's actually, it's his death, it's his ending. He's talking about his ending, if you look at it. And, he doesn't, there's no God, there's no concept, I did it my way, it's everything about me. And that is our culture. It's just not, our culture is just naturally not helpful. And that was 1969. That was 52 years ago. And think about what it is right now. I have another example, but I took it out because I just didn't have the time, but this certainly tells the story.
It feels good, do it.
Yeah. Burger King was have it your way for 40 years, and they changed it in 2014 to You're the Way. What do you mean, you're the way? You're the way? I mean, this is a hamburger joint. This is not, and that was, again, that was in modern times. There's no doubt. It's our culture it's all about me. All right, we contrasted that. Okay, what basics in life helps us overcome our natural selfishness? When we're born, what is the driver for the newborn child? Food, diaper, I want to be entertained, I don't know, I was on the telephone with Marc Friday morning, and his new grandson, 3-month-old grandson, was on the telephone also. You could hear him in the background crying, and we were talking about this, and I said, hey man, Marc, there's no negotiating with a 3-month-old, is there? He said, no, there's no negotiating. When that child is hungry, it's going to let you know. And the diaper, and sometimes they don't even know what they want, and they're going to cry. So we come out of the womb selfish, for a good reason, self-preservation. But for most of us, along comes brothers and sisters, and the world changes, okay? And I really do think, this is all part of God's scheme to get us to be less selfish. And then we get married. Now, marriage is not for the faint of heart. And I don't mean, it really is not. It is difficult. You take even two people with the same backgrounds, but they come out of different households and different values and you smash them together into one, and you try to live. It's tough. It is really difficult. Kathy and I, the first year we were married, we never fought. And the reason was I was working full-time, I was going to school time, she was working full-time and going to school part-time. We'd leave little notes and stuff with each other. It was all romantic and everything else. The next year we had a baby, I graduated, all this kind of stuff, and it was It was tough, okay? Children, I remember when our daughter, our firstborn we brought her home, and all of a sudden I had this realization, I'm not calling the shots anymore. And we don't just go and do whatever we feel like doing. It's all of a sudden, it's like, whoa, there's a new queen in the house, you know? Jobs, bosses, employees, you know, those are all things that help us. Failures in life, finances, you know, God's economy, the way the world is built and developed, it's to help us not to be selfish. But Christ-like basics help us overcome our natural selfishness. Following the teaching of Jesus, it really does make a difference. Appreciating that Jesus died for us. God himself came to earth and died for us. Our desire to please God, to reflect Christ and to others. Seeing others work at following Jesus. When I see people in here doing things and whatnot, and I get encouraged. I see things I should be doing. It's just a natural thing for developing, getting rid of the selfishness. And I think the question here, can you see God's hand in helping you be less selfish? I think that's something that it's a good process. I think we need to think about that. You know, God has brought people into our life, has brought problems in, and I really believe that God either allows problems in our life or sometimes causes them to get us to face up and be less selfish. In the 80s, I struggled with anxiety, and I was talking to my primary care physician, and he told me I had an anxiety attack. I'm arguing with him, you know, right? And he says to me, guess what? You're the kind of guy that gets anxiety because you think you're in control. And it was like he had cold-cocked me. A Scandinavian guy, so he's going to just tell you what he felt. And cold-cocked me, and you know what? That was the best thing that ever happened to me, other than Jesus Christ. I mean, that was the truth of the matter. I think it's good. We don't have the time to go through this, but you know, I think it's really good to see God's hand in helping us be less selfish. All right, today's story is Jesus washes the 12 apostles' feet the night before his death, and it's from John chapter 13. This is the night before Jesus is crucified, just, you know, hours before. He's in the upper room with his apostles, and the evening meal was being served, and the devil had already prompted Judas Iscariot, son of Simon, to betray Jesus. So we have the setting here. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. Awkward? Embarrassing? I mean, think about this. They're reclining. That was the custom that they had. The meal is being served, and I never really realized that the meal was already being served. I've studied this many times and used it as examples, but the meal was being served. We're already into the dinner. Jesus had sent the apostles, to get things set up, and now they're eating, and Jesus gets ready to wash their feet. You know, is this the way the apostles wanted the evening to go? I mean, think about it. I mean, they were having a good time, and Jesus is really doing a lot of teaching, and they were kind of ignoring the fact that he tells them it's, you know, during this period of time he's going to be, you know, he's going to be gone and things like that. What was running through their minds was Jesus was washing their feet. This is, what do you think, how long do you think it took for Jesus to wash 12 men's feet, maybe plus his own? Half hour? 45 minutes? You know? I mean, this is not a 2-minute job for all of them. This goes on as the meal is being served, and they're really struck by it. You'd have to be. What would something like that happen if we were together having a meal? It would just be. You know, they're trying to figure out what's going on and everything else. He came to Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" And Jesus replied, you know, this Peter's got to say something, right? Isn't that right? Peter's got to say something. Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you'll understand." Yeah, like in a few minutes. "No," said Peter, "you will never wash my feet." And of course, Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." And of course, Peter's going to go in the opposite direction. "Then, Lord," Simon Peter replied, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." You know, that truly is Peter. Jesus answered, "A person who's had a bath needs only to wash his feet. His whole body is clean, and you are clean, but not every one of you." And he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he said not everyone was clean. You know, a lot of emotions and dynamics going on here. You've got the meal, you've got Jesus washing feet, and whose feet is he going to wash along with everybody else's? Yeah, Judas's. He knows Judas is going to betray him. He's washing feet. And you know, and they're bewildered. They don't know what's going on. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I have done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightfully so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should also wash one another's feet. For I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. I tell you the truth, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them." So, why did Jesus wash their feet? What's the most obvious answer?
To show them how they should treat others.
I'm sorry?
To show them how they should treat others.
Okay? The feet were dirty, but that was the answer to my other question, but that's right. The feet were dirty. That really had to happen. And it was embarrassing because everybody knew the feet hadn't been washed. But also, you know, he's wanting them to serve each other. He's wanting them to live for others. Now, Jesus had talked to them at least twice that we know of about taking positions. Okay, who's the greatest? In fact, if you remember Marc Compton's Lord's Supper talk, and it goes back to Luke 22, in that, it's that same night, and Jesus has already talked to him about, apparently, all about not taking a higher position. And so, question is, why didn't they get it when he told them? Remember the other time was James and John's mother come to Jesus, and they want their sons to be first and second in command in Jesus' kingdom. So why didn't they get it? What was that?
Why don't I do it?
Yeah, exactly. No, that's right. Why don't we get it? Right. Exactly. I mean, you can tell them and tell them and tell them. Do you think they got it after this encounter? Think about this encounter. Half hour, 45 minutes, whatever, of washing feet. They're embarrassed. They all probably, it wasn't, Jesus does this as partly early in the meal or some point in the meal, so nobody could even have thought, well, I would have done that if I'd have thought of it, or I would have done it, and it's definite, there's definitely, this is long after that foot were supposed to be washed, and they, when Jesus told them to get the upper room and all that kind of thing, when they rented that, I'm guessing they had servants to serve the food. It appears to be that way. Did they have a foot washer that came along with the I don't know, that came along with the thing, Maybe they did, and maybe he didn't show up, or whatever happened. They're embarrassed over that. And Jesus going through all of this, they can't forget it. Could you have forgotten something like this? I couldn't. I mean, it's one of these things where, you can tell them and tell them and tell them. But again, this goes back to the love has to do with performance, with doing things and showing your love. Kathy had open heart surgery 2.5 years ago. And she says to me afterwards, she says, well, I now know that you would take care of me if something happened to me. Now, and it isn't that she didn't think I would do it. She now knows I would do it. She saw me do it. And there's a difference to that, isn't there? I mean, that wasn't no shot at me, and that was no shot at her. That was you now know it's performance. It's it's going to happen. What was that?
I was just going to share, we were in a Bible group in Rochester, New York, and we did a foot washing. And, everybody felt uncomfortable. But as we did it, I felt so humble and humility. And everybody was so quiet afterward. They think they got the serving part because it's the lowest position, the dirtiest part of the body, all those ramifications to really show what Christ did and how he saved.
Right. I was in a leadership improvement group in a church about 30-some years ago, and we were trying to brainstorm something, and I had never done this, and I brought it up. One man absolutely went berserk over that. I mean, he just nailed me up one side of the head and down the other kind of thing. And we never did it, but I don't know why the reaction, but it is a humbling thing to think about doing that. And I know some religions, they go through the rite of doing foot washing. It's really foot washing because they only wash one foot, as I understand it. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about what Paul is talking about. It's humiliating. It's the bringing yourself down to do that. It can be a real change. Dan?
Remember when we as elders went and washed the teenagers' feet?
You know, I honestly missed that. I missed that.
And at first, some of them, not me, but as we watched more and more, they allowed it, and they couldn't believe, here were the elders of the church watching their.
Yeah. I do remember when that happened, but again, for some reason, and I don't think I wigged out on it, but anyway, I wasn't there. We talked about that. You know, why didn't one of the 12 jump in and just help Jesus wash some feet? What do you think? Bob?
They were still fighting on who's the best one.
I'm not sure about that. He said that they're still fighting about who's first. I'm not sure. You may be right, but there's an awkwardness of when you've missed the window of opportunity, seemingly, because, and maybe this kind of gets at what you're saying yet, because if I do it after Jesus is starting it, I'm telling everybody I was wrong before. Maybe that gets toward your point. And we don't like to be admitting that we are wrong, right?
Jesus is one that had the towel in the basement.
Yeah, exactly. It was Jesus, right? He was in charge, yeah. But even then, and Craig is absolutely right. They still didn't quite understand what was going on. I mean, they in fact, Jesus told them he was going to be crucified and all these things, and he'd be raised on the third day. It just went, you know, they didn't even get it. But they got this, and there is no doubt about that. And the question, how has Jesus washed your feet? How has Jesus washed my feet? He has. You know, it's not actually literally foot washing, but he has allowed people in our life, he has caused people in our life to wash our feet. He has been terribly, I know with me, terribly patient with me over the decades. Kind of bringing it home to Southwest. Our first core value of Southwest Vision 2023 is led by the Spirit. By the way, does that go naturally for us? No, it doesn't. And you know, you're trying to figure out how do you do that and all this kind of thing. And it is not, but it is. And I think it is wonderful that it's first. And you know, why is it listed first? I think that's one of the first things we have to overcome is we have to come, you know, the fact that, you know, we're not calling the shots. We're not leading the process. You know, if you look at the book of Acts, and I have taught the book of Acts many times, when the Holy Spirit comes on them and the church simply deals with what is coming their way on a daily basis. They didn't have some grand plan. They dealt with the situation. They dealt with things, you know, with Peter and John going into the temple and healing the man and arrests and all of the other things that go on. Ananias and Sapphira, you know, the Greek widows are being overlooked. They dealt with issues. They just dealt with the things. They did the things that they were led to do. And so, you know, I think that's one of the things that's really hit me the last few years is I need to be more visual about looking around and what am I dealing with and what opportunities do I have and what am I missing and what is God leading me to do? Because I do think he does that. He does that for all of us all the time. How difficult is this for us individually and collectively, and why? I don't think it comes natural, does it? I mean, it's just as. What was that? Yeah, and you know, and sometimes, yeah, right, Dan. But sometimes it's good. I think that, for instance, the Vision 2023 is a very good vision. I think it's very good. But you notice the one thing that I'm really appreciative of this congregation is when COVID hit, we did not collapse. We did not collapse. It took a while, a little bit of time to get figured out what's going on and how we're going to deal with it. But people jumped in. People were being called. People were being ministered to. We built relationships within the Summerfield over 55 group. We did, all of the things that have happened in the last year and a half. Some of it's been really tough, but some of it's been wonderful. It really has. And so we have simply dealt with the deck of cards that we've received. We simply dealt with those things. And it's paying off. Do we leave this to the professionals? And I'll be honest with you, this time I don't think we did. I honestly don't think we did. I think people were jumping in and helping, and people were calling people and beyond the office. I know Paula Middo was asked to call, and she did, and other things, but I think there were a lot of other things going on. And I know that people were calling their friends and things like that. And so there was a lot of stuff that went on beyond just the ministers doing it. Do we work at considering this as we go through our days? And I think that goes back to my previous point. I think that I've got to have the eyes to see the opportunities that are in front of me. And God has given you gifts, God has given me gifts, and we're to use those gifts with our eyes wide open of how we can help the kingdom. And not everybody can do what Craig can do, or Dan can do, or Randy can do, or whatever, or Bruce, or whatever, Dave. It's what we are gifted to do. Love does not insist on its own way. Turn our life over to God and let Him lead us. That is, I believe that's true. Galatians chapter 5, verse 6. This hit me a few years ago, and it's really, the context is circumcision or non-circumcision. For in Christ Jesus, neither circumcision nor uncircumcision has any value. The only thing that counts is faith expressing itself through love. That's a pretty telling thing, isn't it? Faith expressing itself through love. Wow. Kind of goes back to this concept that Paul had in chapter 13 of 1 Corinthians. And that really puts it on the line. That's the only thing that counts. Marc and I were talking about this, and Marc said, it's easy for us to deal with each other because we have the same standards and the same reference points. But it's really tough when we're out in the world and we're dealing with people and they don't have the same standards that we have and the same, it's a different setting. But we have to learn to live in it. And believe me, I have made my mistakes. I can tell you that along the way. All right. Anything else before we wrap up? 1 Corinthians chapter next week. It's going to be Marc, Compton, and Thomas Muirk. You and Marc are going to be teaching. Is that right? Good. And you're going to be they're going to be teaching from verse 6 of chapter 13. Love, does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. And then after that, Marc and Ken will return and take up where they left off. All right. Well, anything else before we wrap up? This has been pretty intense. I appreciate your attention, and let's go to God in prayer. Father, thank you for your love and for watching over us. Help us to not be selfish. Help us to realize that you need to be in control, not us. Forgive us, Father. Help us to do better with this, to have our eyes wide open, to see the things around us that we can do, the opportunities that you give us, the people that we deal with, the people of our neighbors and friends and family and others that we deal with on a regular basis. Help us to love and operate on that love, based on that love. And let it show the faith that we have in you. Thank you, and I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, thank you very much.